than boys do for ADHD. So boys will be outwardly very excited. They'll be really hyperactive. They're on the go all the time. Where girls, it's more internal and their minds are going all the time and they're perfectionists. So when things aren't perfect or they don't get things perfect, then
Awekenge, this is Mental Mythos, hosted by Asekho Toto.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Mental Mythos. I'm your host, Asekho Toto, and before we dive into today's incredible conversation, I have a small favor to ask. If you enjoy what you hear today, please take a moment to rate and review our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Your feedback not only helps us improve, but also helps others discover the valuable insights we share every week. And if you find today's episode particularly inspiring or insightful, don't forget to share it with your friends, family, or anyone you think could benefit from it. Thank you for your support. It truly means the world to us. Now, let's get back into our conversation. And I just want to start in terms of I believe that having children with invisible disabilities can be hard, and I'm quite sure about that. And it's hard to navigate that thing in terms of just doing your research, how to take care of children, a child with a neurodivergent invisible disability, and you don't only have one but three of them, and as I've said, that it's quite challenging. But firstly, I just wanna you to share us. Could you start by sharing a bit about your journey and what led you to pursue career in music therapy?
Yeah, so when I was in high school, I was like, I need to know what I'm studying in college. And I was like, I want to do music, but I don't want to be a teacher and I don't want to be a performer. And I also want to study psychology. So I randomly found music therapy, and I was like, oh, this is perfect. You're using music in a functional way, and it's combining music and psychology to help people. And so that's what I wanted to do. And then I was always really interested in people with autism. And so that's who I decided to work with. I work with children and adults with autism, and I've worked with them for 18 years. I've been a music therapist since 2011, and I work with children and adults who are neurodivergent, mostly with autism and other like neurodivergent diagnoses. But that's why I got into music therapy.
And as I mentioned earlier, that it's something that's new to me and something that I never thought of. There's this thing that you can do music therapy and also study for certain things, because the way I'm saying it in terms of, I didn't look at it in this perspective of treating, I would say, children, adults that have autism, and in a way I thought music could be used not only when you're feeling down, just to hype yourself up by listening to other music. And it's quite interesting to be able, in terms of how curious were you when it came to studying music therapy?
How what?
How curious were you when you're pursuing this career?
Yeah. I did not know all the things that music can do to your brain. It makes new neural pathways in your brain. So I was super interested in it. Like, I was just like, I want to do this. I don't know how it works, but I'm going to do this, you know? And so that's how I really started out. And then I learned that music can make new neural pathways in your brain. It accesses more of your brain than any other stimulus. So let's say you get a brain injury in your communication centers. And in fact, Gabby Giffords, she's a congresswoman in Arizona, and she had a traumatic brain injury, and she used music therapy in her recovery and was able to speak again. And she credits a lot of that to music therapy, working with speech therapists and occupational therapists and physical therapists, that the music was able to access the part of her brain that wasn't damaged, and it created new neural pathways so that she was able to speak again. And first she hummed, then she sang, and then she spoke, and she can speak just fine now. So that's an example of what music can do to your brain. And yeah, I was so curious about that. Like, I just thought that was so cool.
And being someone that has children with, in terms of, before I get into that, can you explain to us the process of when it comes to your clients, either a child or an adult, how does it work, the music therapy with autism or ADHD?
Yeah, I work on different skills such as motor skills, communication skills, cognitive, social emotional, any of that. And I use music to work on those skills. So for example, if a kid can't speak, I sing books with them. And then the hope is that they will hum the melody, and then they'll sing the melody, and then they'll say the words without the music in it. And they will learn to say the sounds and the words without the music. And then, motor skills. So music can help you, complete a motor action, and you just use the music to prime the body and then to finish the action. And so like if you have trouble walking, or you have trouble like lifting your arm up, like, you can't see me, it's a podcast, but just lifting your arm up, to like reach for something, the music can prime your body to complete that action. And so those are some of the things that we do. For social emotional, I work with a lot of autistic kids and adults. They don't understand emotions. Like, they know they feel them, they can see them in other people, but they don't quite know how to interpret them, and they don't know how to label them. And so with like little kids, I will read a book about certain emotions, like the Diane Albert Spot books. I read a book about being mad. And then a lot of autistic people also have trouble with flexible thinking, and so they're very concrete thinkers. So in order to help with that, we write a song and say, what does anger taste like? What does it smell like? What does it look like? And they're like, well, anger is a feeling. It doesn't taste like anything. And I'm like, but if you could imagine it tasting like something, what would it taste like? And that helps really expand their flexible thinking. So we do that, and then we write the words we fill in the blank. So I feel angry when, and we do that 4 times. And then when I feel angry, I can. So we do all that when they're calm. And then when they're angry, they can sing that song and think of maybe some things that they can do. So when they feel angry, they can think of their song and say, oh, in the song, it says, when I feel angry, I can scream into a pillow, or I can go for a walk, or I can play my music, stuff like that. So those are just some things that we work on in those different areas.
It's quite interesting thing, and also it's quite an interesting concept when it comes to healing, in terms of helping kids or adults that are dealing with autism. And as I mentioned earlier, that it seems like it's a hard thing that raising kids with autism and ADHD, those two things. And how has music therapy have helped you when it came to raising your 3 boys?
Yeah, so I have 3 kids, like you said, with autism, and I have ADHD, so we're all neurodivergent in our own way. And very interesting because they're like what triggers them is opposite of what triggers me. And so I have to learn self-regulation for myself. So when they're being loud, because they are sensory seekers, they want to be loud. They want to crash into things. They're always looking for that stimulation, where I am a sensory avoider. I like things quiet. I don't like a lot of pressure on me, all that kind of stuff. So I have used music for my own coping skills. So when I really need to process something, I can go and play the piano. And anyone can do this. If you're feeling like overwhelmed or overstimulated, it's been shown that music can reduce, like on a genomic level, it can reduce your stress level and reduce cortisol and just switch that from being stressed to non-stressed. So the different ways you can do that are you can participate in playing an instrument or making music with a group. You can have a dance party. You can do progressive muscle relaxation with music. Any of that you can do, and it will help you relieve the overstimulation. And so I rely on that a lot as a parent because I get overstimulated by my children so much. But to help them, you can do the same things with them. Like they can listen to music, they can have a dance party and like really relieve that music. Another thing that you can do is actually regulate your emotions through using music. And that's using what we call the ISO principle. And the ISO principle is just a term that means you start with one emotion and you go to another emotion, but you use music to get there. So if you're angry, you want to listen to angry music first. And then you go to calm music. You don't just want to turn on the calm music or turn on the happy music. You really have to feel your feelings and then move through those feelings. That's the key, is to feel your feelings, listen to the angry music, and then move through those feelings toward the calm or happy music. But it's kind of like if you just turn on the calm music, it will shock your body and you won't be able to really move through those feelings and process the emotions. You'll just be trying to cover them up. But if you listen to the angry music first and then go to calm music, you can process the emotions and then actually feel calm and not still that underlying anger. And I do this with my kids' activity levels too. So if they're bouncing off the walls and everyone's like highly stimulated and, just very excited, you can play exciting music. You can play music with a lot of different elements, with a lot of different things in it. And then you can slowly bring down the music to maybe like one or two things in the music instead of, having everything going on, maybe a simple melody with one instrument playing. And that will help bring down the chaos that's going on and bring down the excitement level to really help your kids regulate their excitement level so they're not quite overexcited. They can come down and be a little bit more calm.
As a parent and someone that has an invisible disability, what are some misconceptions that you've came across within the years that you've been someone that practices music therapy? And what are misconceptions about actually not only ADHD, but also autism, the neurodivergent disorder?
Yeah. When I was growing up, everyone said I was fine because I seemed to handle my life well, but I had all the markers of ADHD. But I was a good student. I sat in my seat. I did my work. I was a straight A student. I did not struggle in school. But I was struggling socially, but not to the point that it was super noticeable. It was just inside my body. And inside my head, I was constantly like, I couldn't calm down. I couldn't be at rest. My mind was always going and I was having intrusive thoughts and I was having all this stuff, but I never told anybody because I had this thing where I was like, oh, I have to be perfect or I was a perfectionist. I wanted I wanted people to think I had it all together. So I think that's a common misconception, is that in women especially, that girls present differently than boys do for ADHD. So boys will be outwardly very excited. They'll be really hyperactive. They're on the go all the time. Where girls, it's more internal and their minds are going all the time and they're perfectionists. So when things aren't perfect or they don't get things perfect, then they just shut down. So I think that's a common misconception, that just because you're not hyperactive on the outside, it doesn't mean you don't have ADHD. It doesn't mean there's not something going on. And then as I got older, my coping skills kind of just collapsed when I became a mom, when I was working full time and I was in charge of my house, all those things, like they just piled on and piled on and piled on until I couldn't do everything anymore. And that's when I was diagnosed, because everything just kind of fell apart. So I would say just because people look like they have it all together does not mean they have it all together.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And then I've heard parents say, oh yeah, my kid had ADHD or they had autism when they were younger, but they don't have it anymore. And that's not true. Like autism, ADHD, OCD, all those things, they are lifelong diagnoses. So if you look at your kid and you're like, oh, they're not having problems anymore, I guarantee they are. They just have better coping skills and they have better ways of covering it up.
I'm just loving the fact that in terms of, according to my knowledge, that it's a disorder that one cannot be cured in terms of ADHD and autism. And also one thing interesting thing that you said, that you were a straight A student. And I feel like that's something that I've seen, a pattern that I've seen in terms of when one is diagnosed with, let's say they have ADHD or autism or have both, I don't know how their brains work, but it turns out to be, they become these straight A students. They focus on that certain part. And as you said, that you have struggled with social skills and tend to have problems with social skills. That's how I have seen it. And also I have seen how they force in terms of those trying to, I would say that, to go past that barrier of being social. And sometimes I think it becomes hard as someone is working at the office of disability, at a disability unit. It's something you come across to different people with ADHD, people with autism, people with depression, people who have anxiety disorders, and it can be quite hard. And I really, in terms of the institution that I'm working for in Nelson Mandela University, it's when it comes to, I would say, mental health as a whole and disabilities as a whole, it's something that they try by any means to just create that advocacy, create that awareness that no, we have inclusion. We include students that have disability. We include whether it's physical or it's invisible, and that's what I like. And definitely you mentioned that you didn't find out until you were a mother that you had ADHD. How did it feel given that diagnosis?
It was so amazing when I got the diagnosis, because I was like, oh, this totally explains why I do the things that I do. I'm not lazy. I'm not like weird. It's just how my brain works. Because when you have ADHD, like I got to the point where I had paralysis, like decision paralysis, where I wanted to do something. I just physically could not do it. And I was just like, I am so lazy. What is my problem? But once you figure out that like you have ADHD, and I'm on medication, and medication changed my life. but medication is not for everyone. And I understand that. But even if you're not taking medication, there are so many people out there that can help you, like coaches and just people that understand executive functioning, and they can help you create new routines in your life or new routines in your life that you can function better than when you don't have that support.
And one thing that I've realized is the fact that I remember back, I think 3 months back or 2 months back, whereas my supervisor said that maybe I have ADHD, and I feel like the feelings that you had, I actually sometimes have, in a way of thinking that I'm too lazy, I should do more in terms of that, and I always have energy. Don't lie to you. Whenever I get the chance, I always get so energy. And one thing that I've realized, when I wake up, I become so tired. But
Yeah.
as much as I'm tired, I just want to work, and it's just a temporary, I would say, state. I read on your profile that you have the concept of positive discipline. So can you elaborate on that concept of positive discipline and how it integrates with your approach to parenting and therapy?
Yeah. I believe that if you use positive strategies to parent your child instead of using like punishment and traditional parenting strategies, that you can create a better relationship with your child and really understand what they're trying to communicate through their behavior. All behavior is communication. So if your child is doing something that you don't like, or they're, like having maladaptive behavior, then they're trying to communicate something to you. It might be that they don't think you're paying enough attention to them and they want that connection with you. And so they will do things that get your attention, whether that be good attention or negative attention. They will do the things, whatever is going to get your attention. And so if you start doing connection activities with them, like really doing what they like to do and just having that one-on-one time with them, then maybe that maladaptive behavior will decrease. And then I always say, well, in positive discipline, they say connection before correction. So really looking and seeing at how you're connecting with your child before you just punish them and just punish the behavior instead of giving them what they need. So for neurodivergent kids, a lot of them have meltdowns because of sensory reasons. So, they might be somewhere and have a meltdown because the lights are too bright, or there's too many people in the room, or it's too loud, or they feel itchy, or they feel hot, something like that. And a lot of parents might not realize that they're having the meltdown because they're too hot and it's uncomfortable for them. It's not they're having the meltdown because they want to. It's that they're just completely overstimulated and overwhelmed. And so I try to help parents look at the kid's behavior and really see what's going on under the surface. And then, sometimes kids just misbehave because they didn't get something that they wanted, or they're told no on something, or, they got something, but then they don't want it anymore. I feel like that's what toddlers do. They're like, no, I don't want this anymore. And that's different, but really giving like natural consequences for things that happen. So if your child spills milk on the floor, a natural consequence would be that they have to clean it up. Instead of, I don't know, I've seen parents like send their kids to the corner with their nose in the corner because they broke something, and I just feel like that's not really a natural consequence. That's not something that naturally happens. And so if you can do the natural consequences, teaching them the consequences for their actions, and then teaching them what they have to do to make it right. And sometimes, kids do need a break, and you can send them to their room or whatever, but you have to have a purpose for it. There needs to be a plan. So, for example, when my two boys are fighting, I might say, oh, do you need a break? Do you need to go to your room? Do you need to be alone? Do you just need to take some deep breaths? And not just sending them away just to send them away and to think about what they've done, in quotes, but really having a purpose for being alone and using that and giving them the skills to calm down and self-regulate.
I love the saying that you just said, that connection before correction. And it's fun how I would say that I had a guest, the first guest I had today, we spoke about in terms of teenagers and how they react, and in terms of we navigated our conversation through parenting. And I love the fact that I would say that the thing, or you mentioned the fact that some parents just give the kids the option of going to the corner and just think about what they did. But in terms of, it doesn't teach what the world has in store for them. For example, if they do something when they are older, let's say in their university or college, in terms of when they do something, they will expect the people out there to put them in a corner, which is wrong. And sometimes you must be harsh in terms of to your children in order to teach them this is how the world treat you. You need to respond in a way that you won't be surprised if this thing happens. It's quite interesting. And in terms of, you also practice DBT, which is dialectical behavior therapy. And also you mentioned that is significant component of your practice. Could you elaborate on how DBT informs your work in music therapy?
Yeah, so it's once again teaching people the skills they need to really understand what's going on and how they can process their emotions, process their actions, and make a plan to go forward to be, just to be better, I guess, live the life that they want to live. So it's really nice for people who maybe went through a traumatic experience and they need to learn to accept it. They need to learn how to move on. They all of that, so they can really understand what happened in their body and how they can move forward in a positive way. And I would say that's what DBT is really helpful for.
And I believe that every work has problems. We have challenges that seem hard to overcome, and sometimes you don't know what to do. When it comes to that, working with children and adults who have autism, how do you overcome such challenges? What are your coping mechanisms and strategies?
Yeah, so I try to personalize my strategies based on the child or the adult, just the client that I'm working with, and help them through whatever's going on. And then for my own coping mechanisms, for example, yesterday was a really hard day at work, and I just got really frustrated with the client. It was not really their fault. It's just a hard job sometimes. And I was able to go get in my car and I cranked up the music and just kind of calm down before my next client and just lean on the coping skills that I have. I like to listen to podcasts. I like to listen to music. I like to sing. I like to be active, and all those things can help me when things become overwhelming and I don't know what to do with a client, or, I can't quite understand the client, or just the job is hard in general. Those are the things that I do. But if a client is having a hard time, I really try to understand where they're coming from. And then we employ musical coping skills to help them calm down And it's just whatever they need. Like, do they need to listen to music? Do they need to write a song? Do they need to play an instrument? Do they need to take a break from music and maybe draw something? I've done that before too, where they're like, I just can't have music right now. And that's totally okay. It's just whatever they need in that moment in the session.
And I believe that we have, when it comes to mental health, is something that is something that people are afraid to talk about. Being openly talking about your ADHD, openly talking about your 3 neurodivergent children, and it's takes a big stand. And also people, I don't want to lie to you, people, in the way I'm saying it, people are not aware of what is neurodivergent. I remember seeing this video online on TikTok of this girl saying that she is neurodivergent, and I was quite confused. What is neurodivergent? And I think 2 days later on, and she posted that video and explained it, actually, what is neurodivergent. And what are some things that as individuals, in terms of, let me not say individuals, let me say as a society, as the mental health field can work on in terms of assisting neurodivergent people?
I think the first thing is just believe them that they're having the issues that they say they're having. A lot of ADHD and autism can be easily masked. And a lot of people will be like, oh, you're not autistic because you do this, or you're not autistic because but you like having friends, so you're not autistic. Or this is the one that gets me. Everybody does that. But do they do it to the extent that you're doing it? So for example, I have intrusive thoughts, and someone that I was talking to said, oh yeah, everybody has those. I get those like once a week. I said, that's great for you. I have them once every half hour. So I think it's the severity to which you experience stuff, because yes, everyone has intrusive thoughts. Everyone is socially awkward sometimes. Everyone, has these issues sometimes, but it's to the extent that you're experiencing them when there might be, a cause for you to get some help if you want it. And so I think if someone says like, I'm autistic or I have ADHD, even if they don't have like an official diagnosis, you can say, okay, how can I help you with those things that you're experiencing? Because they might not be diagnosed with autism, but they're having those things happen to them that they feel like they have autism. And it doesn't matter. Like a diagnosis, I swear, is just for insurance purposes. So I once had a mental health, practitioner tell me that. She's like, I'm diagnosing you with this. You don't really have it, but I just need it for the insurance to check a box, So just because they're not officially diagnosed with it, or they're diagnosed with something else, like they're still feeling those things. So help them how you can. It doesn't matter what a piece of paper says. Like if they're experiencing those things, then they need help with those things if they want it,
And that's the thing about claiming that you have something without a diagnosis. For example, having a certain mental health disorder, of thinking that, like, for example, if I said I have anxiety disorder, I have autism, I have ADHD, and people tend to not believe you, tend to saying that, you're just throwing a tantrum, and you don't have that thing. So, I just want to say thank you so much for being here. Thanks so much for sharing your story, for sharing your expertise on the topic around neurodivergent. And I really appreciate it. And definitely I've learned a lot from our conversation, and hopefully the audience have learned something from you as someone that is just, in terms of, I really enjoyed having you here, and the interesting conversation. I love the fact that you are able to come here and talk about your story. And sometimes one thing that I have seen is the fact that when some people believe when a certain person talks about a certain topic and they don't have that certain disorder, they're a bit of skeptical. But when a person that has a certain disorder talks about something they're experiencing, that's what people believe. And I believe that